Okay, the sugya that we are in the middle of is halacha that Rav and Shmuel said that whether or not it's one big mechira or a series of mini mechiras depends very much on what you said when you sold. So if someone says, I'm selling you a core for shloishim sloyim, that means that's all he wants to do. And he's not selling 15 for half of that. It's one sale. Therefore, until all of the 30 saw were in the measuring cup counted, the sale is not chal. But if he spoke out, I'm selling you 30 saw, but I'm charging you a sela per saw. So now what you did is you broke down the large sale into a whole series of mini sales. Then each sela will be koina for you. And the Gemara yesterday said that only works if, when you're pouring it in, there's lines that mark each saw, because that will show that I mean each one. But you need both. The Gemara concluded. You needed to say, I'm giving you a saw besela, and if there's lines by each saw, so you could actually see when each one is filled, it's literally like I'm filling 30 individual containers, because you had each line, you filled another container. Now we're up to another raya to discuss or to check Rav and Shmuel Salah. And we're on Peivav Amid Beis. I'm sorry, I was on the wrong daf. We're on Peivav Amid Beis, the second line from the bottom. Tashema hasoicher as a poil lasos imoy legoyrin hayoim bedinner. The Zman HaGorin is, I think, Sukkot time, right? That's Chag HaAsif. So Pesach time, 6 months in advance, he makes a deal with workers. I want to hire you to work for me starting in 6 months' time, and I'm going to pay you every day. I'm going to pay you a dinner. Now, the market rate is, if you want to hire somebody Sukkot time, not pre-hire him, the going rate of the Gemara on Pezayim Amar Aleph, Ulegoyrin Yofasel. Really, the value of that worker is 4 times the amount. So by prepaying him 6 months in advance, you're buying his labor at a 75% discount. So what is this? This is obviously ribbis, because I'm giving you 25 cents today, and in 6 months, you're giving me back $1 worth of labor, but $1. That's a mamish often grab ribbis, is what the Gemara feels at this point. Also, the Hanis Hemenu. Therefore, of course, the Balabas is not allowed to have enough from that work, because it's often a grub ribs. Aval, but if we structured it differently, and what he did is, I don't want you to start working for me in 6 months. I want you to start working for me right now, and you'll work through this Zman HaGorin. I'm hiring you for a year straight, and I'm paying you $100,000 for the year. But he did speak out. I'm actually renting you for the whole year, but I'm going to pay you a dinner per day. And really, but really, the work that he's going to do in 6 months that he's prepaying is worth so much more than that, that will be mutter. Why? The Rashbam says, because the way we look at it is we package the entire labor package as one package. You're buying it right now. He's not waiting. You're not waiting to get your labor. He's not waiting to get his money. There's an instant transaction. I'm paying you now, and you're giving me as one block labor, and you're starting right now. So there's no futures. It's not ribbis. But the problem is he spoke out b'din eliyoim. So if you hold like Rav and Shmuel, that when you speak out the daily rate or the saw rate, we look at it like a series of individual sales. So here too, yeah, I might be hiring you for a year straight, but it's really a separate sale every single day. So Lagabe Shas HaGoyrin, I'm paying you now, and you're only delivering back the money, the value of the money in 6 months. We're right back where we started from. Hachanami Kama Mifsik Pasuk. Every day is a separate day, and he's prepaying for the days of the Shas HaGoyrin, and he's getting back way more than he gave. And therefore, also Lahanas Mimenu, even Medina Leyoim, Ulagoyrin Yavasela Mutter, why? Amai Agar Noter Lihu. It's literally Agar notally, I'm paying you because you're waiting for me to repay you for money that you gave me. It's often grab ribis tayrais. Amarava, Zokrava, it's not a cash at all. It's not ribis tayrais. Fitizbara, zilzuli b'schiris, mi aser. You're making a mistake. By you prepaying my schiris, and because of that, I'm working for cheaper, that's not ribis at all. Ribis is when I'm actually giving you something. Either you lend me money and I'm giving you back more money, or you prepay for an object and I give you back more value in object than you paid me. But when you're giving labor, you're not giving him anything tangible. You're not giving him anything. He paid you and you gave him a good deal because he paid you in advance. That's not ribis. It's not ribis at all because you're not giving him anything back. Ribis is when you give me something and I give you back more. But here I retained all of the money that you gave me. I didn't give you back any of it. Rather, I worked for you. That's not called ribis. That's not called giving you back more than I got because it's a non-tangible. So, Frank Gemara, if you're telling me that ribis doesn't apply at all when it comes to schiris, so then why in the ratio do we say asur lehenis from Frank Gemara, abizoi ma'ishna ratio ma'ishna seifa. So, Gemara ratio the loika ovid bahadei mehashta. He's not starting to work right away. I'm paying you money, and you're first going to start working in 6 months. That's mechse kaganati. It only looks like ribis. It's a gzeira d'Rabbanan because it looks like ribis. Seifa de ka'ovid bahadei. The seifa the ka'ovid bahadei mehashta, where you're starting to work right away, so it looks like the transaction is immediate. There's no benefit because we waited, because we didn't wait. We started the transaction right away. And therefore there's no gzeira reference. Simple. So at the end of the day, Rav and Shmuel stand, and we haven't found any brayso to be makish. Zok the Gemara, the Mishnah taught us that if I want to sell you pears, and the pears are mechubel karka, if you cut down some of the pears, you'll be cutting the whole field. How does this magical kinyan work? Frankly, how does that kinyan work? How does cutting down some fruit make you be cutting the whole field of fruit? Zok Gemara, the Moicher told Lekech, Lech Yefelach Karka Koshu, make a small improvement in my property, and through that improvement, the Kani Komashallah, you'll be cutting whatever's on. So, how does the mechanics of this kinyan work? It's about Chalekis, the Rashbam and Tosfos. The Rashbam says there's a Chiddush Nifla over here that not only does kinyan Chazaka work on Karka, kinyan Chazaka works even on Mechubel Karka. So therefore, it works. Mechubel Karka has a status of Karka. How is this a Chazak on the Karka? How is cutting stuff down improving the Karka? Zok the Rashbam, it's a minimal improvement, but the improvement is if you cut down some grain, now I can plow. So it's preparing it for the next plowing season. That's the minimal improvement that occurred. And once that happens, that's called the Chazaka, and therefore you'll be cutting the Mechubel Karka. Tosh says, no, that doesn't work that way. Tosh says, when you make the chazaka, you're ka'oina b'she'ela. I'm lending you my karka, and you're making a kinyan she'ela through this chazaka. Once you're a shayla on the karka, you will be kanya the produce that's on it with kinyan chaser. So that is the machlokes, if it's a new kinyan of chazaka, or if it's just a way of getting into a kinyan chaser. Zok the Gemara vayta. Let me ask you a question. When you fill up your car with gas and you're paying $4,000 a liter, right, with the carbon tax, right? So you fill it up and it clicks, right? What do you do at that point after the nozzle clicks? You just take it and put it back in your car?
No.
What do you do?
I take off the nozzle because every drop.
So you hold it up and you wait till whatever's in there drips into your car because at $1.69 a liter, every drop counts. Would you agree? So this is not a new thing. This has been going on since the beginning of times. You're middle of doing a transaction, and in the middle, whatever you're selling goes up and goes down. If it goes up, the moicher would want to be chosher. If it goes down, the lekech would want to be chosher. So the halacha is, I was going to do it a third time. The Moshe wanted to start. So I'm up to the Mishnah on Pei Zayin Amud Aleph. And when we're done, we'll go back. So Zak Gemara, Hamoicher Yayin v'Shemen lechaveroi. Hamoicher Yayin v'Shemen lechaveroi. So let's ask something. When you fill up your car with gas, you hold it and it clicks. What do you do from the time it clicks to the time you put it back on the tank, on the pump? Huh? What do you mean you fill it up? Clicked. And what do you do after it finishes clicking? Then what do you do? Oh, see, him and me do something else. We hold it up over our gas tank to drip out whatever's still in the hose. Because at $1.69 a liter, I want to like squeeze every drop out. You don't do that? You just take it away. You let the gas drip on the floor. I hold it for a couple of seconds, let it drip.
This is a question. What is your kids? And you're pushing it and it gets filled and you go back until the top. And you slurp the liquor to be able to get the.
I treat it like a kosher Abdullah. I fill it until it spills over. Then it's full.
That's
right.
Not on the floor.
So Zok to Gemara. So Zok to Mishnah. Hamoicha Yaim v'Shem l'Chaveiroi. V'Hook Roy shows. So when is the sale irrevocable? Imat shaloi nismalas hamida l'moich. If the full keli measurement keli is not filled up, the kinyan wasn't chal yet, and therefore we say it belongs to the moicher. So if it went up, the moicher benefits, and if it went down, the moicher loses. But mishin nismalas hamida, once the keli is full, lilakeach. Now we just learned yesterday the only way to explain this. The Gemara is going to clarify, but this is only speaking if you're using the keli of a third party. You're borrowing the keli of a third party, and therefore he's giving it to the moicher until it's fully measured, and then he's giving it to the lakeach to transfer into the lakeach's keli. What if there was a broker in between them? The way the Rashbam learns is that the broker is buying it from the seller and selling it to the buyer, and that's where he makes his cut. So if during this transition, nishbara hachavis, the barrel breaks, nishbara lasirser. Why? Obviously, because it says at the time, right? Correct Taisvis under Rashbam, if that's all we're trying to discuss is whether or not the sirser is koined for that intermediate time, why didn't we deal with hukru hosel? Why go to a different litmus test of whether or not it belongs to the sirser? It should have said hukru hosel to the sirser. Zok Toises, that's not pshat. We're not talking about a sirser who actually buys it and sells it. He's merely an agent working for the moicher and lekech, providing a service. But one of the services that he provides is that he measures it for them. He's doing it as a service. And if while he's measuring it broke, he's only a shomer sacha. If it broke because he did something inappropriate, he was a little wild, and he caused it to break, then the sister has to pay. So therefore, it's not a question about belong to him. It doesn't belong to him. It's just discussing his liability if he's not careful when he's doing what he was contracted to do. Now, the Bach changes the gears around a little bit, but I'm going to just read it as the Mishnah says. You have your jug full of oil that you're selling to your friend. Your friend has an empty jug, right? So what do? You take the jug and you pour it in, and it stops, it runs out and stops running. Now it's dropping, drip, drip, drip. How long do you have to stand there? You can stand there for 3 days till it all drips out. Zog the Mishnah, you wait till 3 drops come out. I don't do that by my gas tank. I wait till it stops dripping. I'll be there for 3 days if I have to.
You're talking about the first 3 drops?
Correct.
Or 3 drops once
Good,
it slows down?
good to the last 3 drops. No, at first it's a flow. Once the flow stops and it's dripping, you wait for 3 drops. But once it's not a steady flow, is how I understood it. I might be wrong. Now, after that, you still have residue of oil or wine on the walls of the barrel. So what you do is you don't stand it up, you lean it on its side to let everything drain off the walls to the bottom, and then collect it, and there's more. Who gets that? Harchina umitzis, so the stuff that drains off after it's lying down, harehu shel moicher, the moicher gets to keep that. And the Rashbam explains, as the Gemara will explain, really it should belong to the lekeach. But the lekeach is not interested in waiting in your store for 3 days. So after a certain point, he's miyayish. Okay. What about if you're a chemini? Now, chemini is it's busy in the store, in or out. He doesn't have time to wait, drip, drip, drip. So therefore, he doesn't have to wait. He just stops pouring, done next. He doesn't have to sit there and wait. It'll take too long to complete each transaction. Rabbi Yehuda says, Erev Shabbos imcha shecha pot. Erev Shabbos imcha shecha, you don't have to give 3 drops. So there's one side in the Gemara that says he was going on the earlier case by the wholesaler. It says the wholesaler has to give 3 drops, but if it's Erev Shabbos, the wholesaler doesn't have to give 3 drops. He's in a rush. There's another side in the Gemara that's talking about a chemini. When do we say a chemini doesn't have to give 3 drops? That's only on the Erev Shabbos. But the rest of the week, a chemini also has to give 3 drops. But then the store is not so busy. So the Gemara is going to ask a shayla, what does it mean?
When did they start doing when you separate service from April? and not be violent. If you have a liquid and it's solid, you can pour out the liquid. Because it's not butter, because it's still together. But when it starts to stop the drip.
Now it's already mixed together.
Then it's already.
It's coming out of the button.
It's like a teaspoon. Then you get it out there.
Here,
Does it have to do with 3 drops left or
Here.
more? I don't know. if
very
that's
interesting.
very-
Interesting too. So Frank the Gemara, how many did the we already spilled the beans and we said it's speaking by it's a third party keli, but the Gemara has to start from scratch. How many did the this keli, where we're talking about that until it's full it belongs to the moicher, and after it's full it belongs to the lekech. Who owns the keli that they're measuring it with? You let me meet the lekech. Why? It's a midah the lekech, and as soon as it goes into the lekech's keli, he should be kind. Of course, according to Rav and Shmuel, it has to be speaking where he said I'm selling it per liter, and then there's lines on it, so the liters are identified. Velo midah the moicher, elamai, it's in the keli of the moicher. Mishin is malis midah the lekech. Why? How is lekech kanyat? Midah the moicher was sitting in a kelim of the moicher. Amar beloy b'midah sir. We're talking about the keli doesn't belong to either the lekech or the moicher. It belongs to the broker. Frank the broker has not yet entered the scene in the Mishnah. The Mishnah only introduced the broker in the next case. But we could tell you, say, if so Gemara, no. In the Reisha, we're talking about a seerser who doesn't provide services, but he does provide you with the measuring stick, or the measuring cup. Seifa, we're speaking about a seerser who's more involved, the seerser atzmai, when he himself does the work. Zakt Gemara weiter. Hechina umitas harei b'shaloi. Kisalak Rabbi Lazar, when Rabbi Lazar went up there to scroll, he met Zeiri. He asked him, is there anybody here who learned the halacha of midos by mechira, midos by mechira, by Rav? Is there someone who learned it by Rav? Achvei Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimai. So Zeiri showed Rabbi Yitzchak, he's a Talmud of Rav. There's another use that the Tosfos brings, mi katan de lisnaya Rav midos, meaning someone who taught Rav midos, and again Zeiri told him Yitzchak bar Avdimai. Frank Tosfos, Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimai cannot be Rav's Talmud and Rav's Rebbe. So Tosfos, there's 2 Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimais. And those are what the 2 disclosures to be referring to. I remember when I was looking into one of my Edemis for Shidduch, I had one group of people tell me that he's the best bacher in the yeshiva, he's unbelievable. And then I had somebody else tell me the guy's Yutzlach, he's a batlin, he's wastes time. So you never hear information that so me kotza, and they're saying with 100%, went back to these, no, his mom is gewaldig, and no, his mom is horrible. How do you have something like that that's so different? But they were. So I called the Rosh Yeshiva and I told him I have this problem. So he told me we had 2 brachim in yeshiva with that name. And one of them is my Edom. One of them is my Edom and the other one is divorced to it. Zog to Gemara weiter. They're cousins. Zog to Gemara.
The 2 bars, like
The two people with the same names are cousins. Okay? So Zog to Gemara. Amar lei, I got the better one. Amar lei, my kokashaluk. So Rabbi Yitzchak says, can I help you? You have a problem with midos. What is the issue? So the issue is as follows. We just learned from the mission that meaning it belongs to the moicher. The problem is, but Tanan we learned, what about you were being mafresh truma? So let's say you have to give a jug of truma to the kohen. So you filled up a jug from your tevel into there. Here's your truma. Now you're giving it to the kohen. So you're pouring it into his jug. What about those drops? Are those his or mine? What does it say in the mission? Truma. So you see, that doesn't belong to the moicher. It belongs to the lekech. That goes with the product that's inside the keli. Amalei. So Rabbi Yitzchak B'dimei answer, that's not a kasha. It belongs to the lekech. But the lekech is miyai. She's not waiting there a whole day. But the kohen, whether he's miyai or not, doesn't matter. It still has the kedushas truma. That's right. So therefore, your chinu mitzvah raised with truma. Until it's dry, until it's bone dry. Correct. Yeah. So that means you might have to leave it upside down for a week till everything drips out. It's like trying to empty out a honey container. Oil. That's right. Zok Gemara v'achenveni einay chayiv lahativ. Achenveni doesn't have to give those 3 drops. Ibaylu Rebuda Reishakoi Ulukulakai. He's saying that even a wholesaler doesn't have to give 3 drops on Erev Shabbos. Aduma Seifakoi Uluchumra. Maybe when the Mishnah said Achenveni doesn't have to give 3 drops, maybe you're saying that's only on Erev Shabbos. Tashma, a simple raya. The Tanya Rabbi Omer Arab Shabbos im Chashecha Chenveni Potter if they Chenveni Torah. So that clears up any shine. Okay, my father used to love saying over this old joke that Americans might not find to be funny. A father once sends his son to buy milk, and he gets to the store, and the Chavani said, "I'm happy to tell you the milk, but where are you going to put it? You didn't bring a bottle." So he said, "No problem. I could put it into my yarmulke." So he takes off his yarmulke, and he says, "Here." So the guy said, "No problem," and he fills up the yarmulke. But he said, "You bought a liter, and I'm only able to put a half a liter into your yarmulke." You know the story. So he says, "No problem. We're going to turn it over." And then he put the other liter there. Beautiful. He comes home to his father. He says, "Tati, here's the milk." The father says, "I only see half of it. Where's the other half?" So he says, "What do you mean? It's on the other side." Right? That's the story. So let's see this. That's right. So let's see this Mishnah. Someone sent his son who was a cotton to a chavani with 50 cents.
When you buy this, you're buying volume or you're buying, what are you buying? Because if you're buying volume.
I'm not sure what, when you say this, what are you talking about? A Mishnah here?
Wine.
Right.
You're buying
volume. Because we're talking about a midah.
Why do you have to wait for drops? When you reach the level of that volume, that's it, you're done.
So let's say I'm selling you a liter of oil, and I have a keli that's exactly a liter, and I pour it in, and it stops dripping. So technically, there's more stuff in there that's yours. It's part of your liter. But
to top it up.
So the halacha is that in business, the lekeich doesn't care. He doesn't know. He's not mocked to get a different bottle. You know, this isn't halacha. That's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. This is how normal people interact. So it's based on what's the typical deal that people make. Let's say you were in a city where bedafka the lekeich wanted that or insisted that you get it, and that was the minhag, then that's probably what it will be. But the Mishnah is discussing in that time how normal business was done, is what I assume. Zog to Gemara.
Let's say it only filled up halfway. You got to get a whole new bottle for yourself. Once you get a whole new bottle, you just top it up to the level and it's fine. You're saying it's the yucca.
So it's very simple. When you're buying a mechanic and you ask him to fill up your washer fluid, he charges you with a whole container. But if it doesn't all fit, does he put it into your trunk or does he put it back on the shelf? I don't know. Okay, I put it back on my shelf and I don't have the mechanic do it for me. I buy it from Canadian Tire when it's on sale. Zog to Gemara. And you gave him $1, and you wanted him to buy 50 cents worth of oil. So he only gave an isser, which is a half of a punjin. So basically, you gave him $1, and you wanted him to buy 50 cents of oil. The nasmal say isser. So he gave him the oil in the bottle with change. He gives to this cotton. The cotton is going back to his father. He flipped over his yarmulke. He broke the bottle. And the other says, Isser, he comes home completely empty-handed to his father. Who's liable? Zok to Gemara, Zok to Mishnah, Chenveni Chai. Chenveni is liable. So you're going to freak out, what do you mean? You sent him, what did you want me to do? Right? Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda Paiter, you know why? Sham Naskin Shochu. If you sent your son, obviously you want me to give it to your son, that's over. Or, Rabbi Yehuda Paiter, Sham Naskin Shochu. Umoidim Chacham Rabbi Yehuda. But the Chacham would agree to Rabbi Yehuda that the Chenveni is not Chayiv. If the bottle came together with the tinnik from his father, I'm going to read this pashas. This is not going to be the maskana shot in this Mishnah, but for now, the father sends the child with the empty bottle, and the seller, the Chenveni, never touches that bottle. So therefore, he was never Mekabel Achrayis for that bottle. So therefore, even the Rabbanan would agree that the Chenveni is not responsible for the bottle.
Yeah, the Chenveni himself, who has das, unlike this cousin, if he's giving it to this cousin, the Chenveni is entire.
If the Chenveni gave, right, but if the Balabos gave it and the Chenveni never touched it, then it's Mamash and Aveda Midas from the customer's perspective. Okay, Zok to Gemara weiter. So Bisman just looks beyond the Tinuk Umad that Chenveni L'Soicha, the Chenveni just poured the oil into it. There, everyone's moidish and Chenveni potter on the tzluch. I understand why the Rabbanan would be mechayiv for Isser v'Shem. V'hapli, Rabbanan sover l'udei shadrei. He tells Chenveni, "Are you crazy? You thought that I wanted you to give my son the oil? You nuts? No, my son was just telling you I need oil. I expected you to deliver it with your delivery. You have a guy who does your deliveries. I never told you to give it to my son. So Mamela, you were Paisheya. Rabbi Yehuda sover, no, l'shturei lo shadrei. No, when the guy sends his son, the assumption is that he wants the Chenveni to give it to the son. and therefore the chemini is not high.
Is the guy allowed to send his son as a shia?
You live anything you want. You're accepting the risk. If you tell me I want you to give it to my son, then it means you're accepting their wives. What's that? No. So you're not doing the shlichus. You're fulfilling your contract. Ella, what if someone gives me $100 to take my wine and spill it down the toilet? That's basically what happened. Right? Ella, the Bach takes out the word shiber. Ella tzluchis aveda midasi. I don't understand. The tzluchis is an aveda midasi. If the child came with a bottle, why in the world would the Rabbanan hold that the cheveni should be responsible? So the assumption here is that the bottle came with the child. Now, there's still a second case. It means I took the bottle, I filled it up, and gave it back to him. But even then, why should I be chayiv? The moment you gave it to the tinnik, it's already in a Aveda Midas. Right? That's the Gemara's kasha.
Couldn't give it back to the
No, the Gemara says he should be able to give it back to the tinnik, because once you gave it to the tinnik in the first place, it's already in a Aveda Midas. And now it's as if it's broken, so the fact that I filled it up and gave it to him shouldn't make a difference. Right? The Mishnah says if I never touched it, for sure I'm not. For sure. The Gemara is asking, even if I did touch it, it's an Aveda Midas. You know what it is? If you buy product from somebody, wouldn't you want them to use you? Right? I should go to Coach Shri and say, listen, who does your refrigeration? I buy from you. Why wouldn't you use me for your refrigeration? Hey, maybe I should do that. Right? So at the end of the day, I'm your customer, you should be my customer. That's exactly what I'm here. The Balabai says he needs to buy bottles to package his oil with. I'm in the bottle business. So he sent his son with a bottle to try to hope that maybe the Cheveni will buy the bottle off him. And then maybe use it to sell him the oil. So it's the most passive aggressive type of sales pitch. I'm here to buy from you. Would you like to buy my bottle? Right? I remember when on Purim, everybody would go around and all the Balabatim would give the collectors money. So I would stand interference for my father because I was snoring too. So as the Mushaloch came around, I asked them for money. So it's like a pastor, they had no choice, right? Amrav Hoshia, Hacha bebala bayis moichet shluchi yisaskinam, uchagoyin shenot lachenveni almanas lebat. The Chavani took the bottle, not because he wanted to coin it, he wanted to check it out, make sure it wasn't cracked, because he was going to buy it. Now, if he takes it just to look at it, does he own it or not?
Maybe say, forget about buying it. Maybe the family is taking to look at it before he fills it up. He wants to make sure it doesn't have holes in it.
But that's not what the case is. The case is here is he's looking to see if he wants to buy it. Now, of course, he's probably going to want to fill it up, but he's only going to want to buy it if it doesn't have a crack. So the question is, you take it, you didn't decide you're buying it yet, you're still inspecting it. What status does the keli have at that point? So Zok the Gemara.
What happens if he drops it? The family drops it at that point.
Correct. It's like Shmuel. Well, if it was an oinus, if what happened, it was nenas. If he dropped it, then he's a peshe. That could be a different story. The Amar Shmuel, hanoitel klimina umen almanas levakrei, the nenas biyadai, chayiv you'll be chayiv. Which means, what are we saying here? By the machlokes by the shemen and the iser is one machlokes. Did the father mean to tell him to give it to him, or was he just telling him I need a product? But the shluchas, it's a whole different machlokes. The machlokes is, do you hold like Shmuel or not? The Tanakama holds you hold like Shmuel, and that's why the Chenveni has to pay for the shluchas. And if you holds we don't hold like Shmuel, right? Which is not so geschmack because you're making a new machlokes over. But Frank the Gemara, that doesn't help Shmuel because now Shmuel is telling the machlokes tanoim. Lema Shmuel tanoi. So we don't like that pshat. Now let's just get clarity in how it works. That if I'm looking at it to buy, it's mine, right? It's like in the stores. You've touched it, you bought it, right? But how does it work? So the Rashbam, which Tosfos argues on. So the Rashbam says, Levakra im shleimihi amanas l'knoisa. Shmuel, it's looked at the Rabbanan Berbuda. The Rabbanan Berbuda and our Mishnah are arguing whether or not they agree with Shmuel. Why? Normally, you're going to find a new product to be in good condition, and he'll want to be kind. So therefore, we say he's kind right away because the assumption is anyway it's going to be found to be good. Now that only works if they already made up the price. Because if he didn't make up the price, no mechira could be chal. And therefore, when you give it back to the tinuk, it's like you were coining it and then you threw it away. That's called how would I discharge my responsibility if I'm rejecting the bottle? So that's what the Gemara wants to suggest as a machlokes, Rabbi Yehuda and the Tanakama. The problem is it's not the shmak that Shmuel should be told in the machlokes tanoim. El Rabbi Yosef Damar Tavayu. Let's scratch the first pshat, new pshat. We're going to have another 3 pshat until we finally get a good pshat. The cheneveni sells bottles, so the bottles belong to the cheneveni, and the child came empty-handed. And the cheneveni, just like he sells the oil, he sells bottles too, and it's exactly the same machlokes. Did the guy mean to say send it with your delivery guy, or did the guy mean to say send it with my kid? So that's much geschmackers, and it's exactly the same machlokes. This doesn't fit because let's look at the sefer. If it's speaking where this bottle started off by the chemini, because he also sold the bottle together with the product, didn't the Rabbanan say that I'm only sending my child to let you know that I need you to ship it to me with your delivery service? So why in the world would it make a difference if the tzluchis is biyara tinakana? This is the way we're learning till now. The child brought the tzluchis, he never took it. But now we're learning that the tzluchis was supplied by the chemini. So what does it make a difference who's holding the tzluchis at the time until it goes back to the original buyer was garnished? Ella scratched absha. Ella baya bar avin reptina bar avin damir tavayu hachava mayaskina turning on Talmud Aleph to go into notla blamudba. It belonged to the homeowner, and he sent it with his child, and just in case the chenveni will want a measuring cup, he can use this measuring cup. That's mine. Uchedarabba. That means he's borrowing something from me. When he borrows something from me, what is his responsibility as far as returning? Domarabba, hikisha nischayim. What does this mean? Really, me'ikradin, he shouldn't. It's not his. It was given to the child. He shouldn't be mechuyev for it. The question is, once he touched it, does that not make him be mechuyev? But it's certainly you should give back to that. Where do you find such an Indian? You find it by a zokin venil of vichvoidai. If there's a choshev, a godlador walking in the street and he sees an animal running free, he doesn't have to go bring it home. A regular person has to. But if the zokin gives it a tap and it starts running, now the zokin has to bring it all the way home. You didn't have to touch it, but once you touched it, now you're responsible. That's a rabbi. So let's look at the Rashbam. Nobody's selling sluchos. Even though that he didn't send it. Look at the Gimel. He didn't send it so that the Chavani should take it. The Chavani might not touch it at all. Once he does take it, he's chayiv. So basically, he sent it along. The Chavani didn't have to touch it, right? That explains why if it always remained in the hand of the child, everybody else is put it. But he did touch it, so he's borrowing it. Will he be mechuyev for it, or do you say no? It's as if he didn't touch it. So the teretz is, Rabbi says, once you touch something, you're chayiv. Zok you can't say that either, because Eimer de Amar Rabba. Well, first of all, right off the bat, Tosfos speaks out. You have a kasha here like that on Shmuel. Are you going to tell me that the machlokes of Yehuda and the Rabbanan is whether or not the kisha is chayva? That's not a dishmak. But the Gemara is a better kasha. Eimer de Amar Rabba b'balachayim that continue nigra b'raisa. Stop touching the animal is not always machayim. You know why the zokim becomes machayim? Because when you hit the animal, it runs away. So you're making it worse. Till now, it was an animal wandering around the street. Now the animal is going to run further away. You made it worse for the person who lost his aveda. That's how you're responsible. But that doesn't mean touching this bottle, which is not an animate object. It won't move. It doesn't go away by itself. There, it should be that way. So that's not a good try either. So kihagavna mi Omar. Did Rava say halacha in that case? El Omar Rava. Now we're going to have the final shot of our Gemara. But I just want to stop a second. This step in the Gemara, where it was a shaila, if I take responsibility for it, once I borrow it, once I use it, my chiyuv is not just to give it back to the child, which is where I got it from. My chiyuv is to return it back to the balabayas. That's why if I gave it to the child, I'm chayiv, right? Keep that in mind. El Amarava, Ani Varisha V'Chabura, me, and the line of our Chabura, Targunua, together we came up with this pshat. Who is the Arisha V'Chabura? Umani Rab Zera. And you know what he said? I'm not using it to measure this chayr, because for sure I wouldn't be mechuyev. Because Rava, no one holds that if I just used it to measure this deal for the kid, I'm for sure not chai. But here I said, oh, you know what? I'm going to use it for someone else's transaction. I'm telling to somebody else, I'm going to borrow it. Now the owner never let me borrow it. So that's what it is over here. One man molds is a shoyl, and therefore you can just give it back to the kid and you'll be yoitzer, which is Rabbi Yehuda. If you're gazan, you have to give it all the way back. Break the Rashbam, a shoyl also has to give it all the way back. Didn't we just say a moment ago in Rabbo, if he was a shoyl, you'd have to give it all the way back? So how come over here can get away with it? The chiddush is that a shoyl shaloi midas has less of a chiyuv of chazara than a real shoyl. Why? Because a real shoyl, I was marking it to you in Ganson, and you're going to be using it. Therefore, you got to give it back to me. A shoyl shaloi midas, you never let me have it. You never let me have it. So therefore, all my responsibility to do is to put it back where I got it from. So it's a chiddush that even if a shoyl shaloi midas, if he's a shoyl, has less responsibility in returning it than a real shoyl that was b'shus habayim. Okay, we will stop here and we will namshach on Shabbos Kodesh.